Bonjour.
Bonjour.
How are you?
Very good.
All
And
right.
how are you?
I'm good. Good.
Early for you? You're still in your pajamas?
What's that?
You're still in your pajamas?
No, my t-shirt.
Huh.
T-shirt. T-shirt.
Right.
Ah, where are we at?
We are at 11. Thing. Let me see. Yeah. Yeah.
You're finishing off Menachos today?
He might. He said he might finish it today. Hello.
Good evening, everybody.
Hear me?
Susie? Sue? Could you shut this off, please? We're on Yud Aleph, 11. You're going to Kaimi Dar de Gavri, Va'armi B'Kidikoi Koi. We were asking the question, how is a Kohen going to be sure if he closes the door that the tsaras in the house might get smaller? Maybe by the time he says it's tsaras, it's not really tsaras. So the Gemara answer is there's like a line of people, 20 people from the door of the tsaras house, a single file to the Cohen's house. And as they look at it all the time and they tell the Cohen. And at that point he pulls on a rope and he closes the door. Therefore, we were trying to use that case to prove chazaka, that there's a chazaka that if it was there, it's still there. So the Gemara says, though, you can't use it. Now, the Gemara is going to ask another question. Rav Huna said that if when you see a shechted animal, we assume that it's kosher because the majority of animals are not treif. So we use the principle of rov, majority. Where do you know that from? Now the Gemara is going to give us many examples from where they learn rov. But first the Gemara says, what do you mean no? It says in Shmos, Perek Gimel, that you go after the majority. Here comes an important answer. Ruba de Issa Kamon. When we have something in front of us that we can count, like the famous case of 9 kosher butcher shops, 1 treif on a street, and you find a piece of meat outside on the street. Well, we count. There's 9 kosher, 1 non-kosher. The majority is kosher. We say that the meat that is found follows rov. That's a rov that's available for us in front of us. So that's why the Gemara says, Kagon tes chanuyos or v'sanhedrin. When the Sanhedrin votes, you count. 22 voted innocent, 11 votes guilty. He's innocent. That's a row that's in front of us. So we're not asking about that. Lo ka mabailon. Because the Torah says, Achrei rabim lahatos. Ki ka mabailon, ruba de lesa de kamon. Statistics. We don't have a specific group in front of us that we can count. For example, kagon katan uktana. So if we know that Yibum, if Reuven and Shimon are brothers, Reuven dies, no children, Shimon is allowed to marry Reuven's wife. Now, let's say Reuven was a cotton, or, Shimon was a cotton, or Reuven's wife was a ketana. Now, you have to have Yibum with someone who is capable of reproduction and having a child, because that's the whole point of Yibum. A certain minority of human beings, male and female, are going to grow up and never develop sexual maturity. They're going to be either a saris, it's like a eunuch, or an islandess for a woman, and they can't have children. So we should never allow Yibum because of the possibility that they're going to be living with an Ashes Ish who's not capable of having children. Well, rather we say, so the question is Minola. We use Rove. Statistically, we don't have all men in front of us to count, but statistically, most men can reproduce. The majority of men can reproduce, and the majority of women. So we go after Rove. So from where do we know that? Amr Abelazar, Asya Meresha Shel Ola. When you shecht an animal and you offer it as an ola, so you cut it into pieces. And one of the pieces is the head. Cut it up into pieces. The pieces are not cut up anymore. You have to cut them up in certain 6 pieces, the head, the right shoulder, we're given what pieces, can't make them smaller. Now, a certain treifa, blemish in an animal, is if it has a hole in the brain membrane. Now, unless we cut open the skull and check that it doesn't have a hole in its brain membrane, how do we know that we can offer this animal? Maybe it's a treifa. And we're not allowed to cut up the head because we say you have to put the whole head on without cutting it up. So how do we know that the animal's not a treif because of a brain membrane hole? Because we go after the majority. The majority of animals don't have that. So the Gemara says, Mimai, it's not a good proof. No. They open up the skull. They don't divide it into 2 completely, but they make a crack in it so they can examine the brain membrane. Right? That's only if you cut the head into two pieces. Here the two pieces are attached. Less than it's not a problem. So basically, they can cut open the head, and it still does not violate this issue of cutting it into pieces. Now, Marbraid Ravina Omar, Osya Mishviris Etzem Bepesach. We have a lav, prohibition, you're not allowed to break the bone when you're eating it of a korban pesach. Dam Rachmana ve'etzem lo sishruvo. V'necha shem nikav krum shel moach. Same thing. Maybe there's a hole in the brain membrane. You're not allowed to open up the skull because it's called breaking the bone, which you're not allowed to do for the korban pesach. Well, how do you know that the korban pesach that you're offering is not a treifa? Must be we go after this principle of the majority. The majority of animals do not have that. So the Gemara again says, Mimai, it's not a proof. Dilma demanach gumrasa. You burn a hole with a piece of coal through the skull. That's not considered breaking the bone. Ubadiklan, and you check the brain membrane. The Tanya machatech begidin vasorf vatzomos. If you burn the bones, ein bo mishum shviras etzem. So there's a method for you to get access to the brain membrane without violating the law. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer Asya me'alya, that when you offer a lamb as a korban, you have to put the tail. The whole tail is put on the mizbech. The lechel shama nifseka chut hashedra. Let us be concerned that there was a treifa there. You had the spinal cord that was severed, which would make it a treifa. And you can't open up the tail section because it has to be whole. So we're relying on rov and alav mishum damin and zil basaruba that most animals, their spinal cord's okay. So maybe you cut the tail below the spinal cord. No, it goes all the way up near the kidney, and that area has the spinal cord. So the Gemara says again, you opened it up lengthwise. You didn't cut it in two. You opened it up lengthwise to inspect the spinal canal. If you completely cut it. When you leave it attached, less than but it's not a problem. In the instruction, you have to put it on whole. Rav Sheshes Bredavidi Omar, Asya me'egla arufa, the decapitated calf. You have two cities, and a dead body is found near one of the cities. You measure the closest city. Those zikanim have to go down to the river. They have to take an egel, a calf, and they have to decapitate it. So it has to be whole. You can't dissect it. Maybe it has internal defects. And maybe just because an egel is treif, it doesn't disqualify it. It's not so. The word kapara, atonement, is also written by egla rufa, so it has to be not treif like kotshim. So this seems to be a good proof that we go after rov, because rov calves are not treif. The Gemara gives another proof. Rabba bar Shila Omar, Ostemi paraduma. Dom Rachmana v'shochat v'soraf. You have to shech the korban, the paradum, and burn it. Mashchita kishlema. The shchita has to be done when the cow is not cut into pieces. It has to be whole. Avsrefasa kishishlema. So you burn it. You can't examine it and do a post-shchita examination to make sure it's not treif. So we're relying on the lechash duma treifahi. We go after rov. And the Gemara says, "V'chitem and nafkina." Maybe the paraduma could be treif. No, because the Torah calls it a chatas kari rachmana. So it's got to be like a chatas, not treif. Another source. Ravacha bar Yaakov Omer asa misa'ira mishtaleach. The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur took 2 goats. He made a lottery. One of them was offered as a korban. The other one was sent to the cliffs to be thrown off the cliffs. Drachman Amar v'lo kacha shnei asirim. Shiyu shneim shavim. They have to be exactly the same. V'lechesh dilma chad minayu treifahu. Maybe one of them is treif. And you're never going to know whether the one that is thrown off the cliff is treifa. Elalav mishum damin in zilbasaruba. Maybe the goat to Azazel doesn't have to be, can be a treifa, can't be. The 2 goats have to be the same. One of them is going up to Shemayim as an ola or chatas, and therefore cannot be blemished. And therefore the other one can't be blemished. Maybe after you throw it off the cliff, you check it. No, it was broken into pieces. So there's no way to check it if it was a treifa before. So these 3 last cases of Egla Rufa, Paraduma, and the Sur Lazazel, the Gemara doesn't seem to have an answer for using that as a source for Zil Basaruba. However, the Gemara is going to continue to bring sources. Rav Mari Omer, Asa mimoke avi v'imo. The halacha is if you strike your parent, you're put to death. Dam rachmana katle. V'lechesh dima lav avivu. How do you know that your father is your father? Maybe he's not. Ela lav dami mishum zil basaruba. The majority of fathers are real fathers. And we say a principle, Rov be'ilos achrabah. The majority of relations that have been had with the woman is from the husband. But we're only by killing this son who struck his father, you're only relying on Rov. So the Gemara says, maybe the case is limited where you actually kill the son where the father and the mother were in prison. So you know there was no other man. However, the Gemara says, when it comes to sexual immorality, there's no way to completely make sure that the woman didn't have relations with someone else. For example, the jailer could have had relations with her and could be the father. So we have another proof that we go Zilba Saruv. Rav Kanamer Asya Mehoriges Nefesh. When you kill a murderer, we kill him. Maybe the guy he murdered was himself a treifa, and you don't get the death penalty if you kill a person who's a treifa, which is defined as somebody who can't live 12 months because he has the same organ missings as an animal treifa. Most humans are not a treifa, so we're using the principle of Rov. Maybe after the victim who was murdered is killed, maybe we examine him. We do an autopsy. But the Gemara says, how come Minvil? We cannot do Nivel Amaze. So the Gemara says, why not? If you're going to go ahead and kill this guy, maybe you should go ahead and do an autopsy, even though there'll be a defilement of the body. So the autopsy might not give us the answer, because nechesh shema b'mokum sayif nekev hava. Let's say the guy who murdered the human had used a sword to cut his neck, but maybe the guy had a pre-existing hole in his neck, and then sword went right in that location. So we never can know for sure whether the guy had a fatal flaw before he was murdered. So we have to use rove.
Why don't we use
Yes.
the case we mentioned so many times about 10 butcher shops and one treif butcher shop, and you find that's rov also, right?
So we made a distinction before tonight when we started this sugya. That's considered ruba. There's a pasuk in the Torah that says, "Achrei rabim lahatos," go after the majority. The Gemara explained that goes after that. We rely on that pasuk for a majority that's in front of us. When we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kosher, one treif, we can evaluate that majority. But when you have, we said the katan and the ketana, you have a boy and you have a girl. Certain percentage of those will grow up and they will not reach sexual maturity. That's not in front of us. That's a statistic. That's 98% of men can have children. But it's not, they're not in front of us. 98 of the world are not, and you understand that's not a row that's in front of us.
Okay.
So that is what the Gemara is trying to find a source for.
Okay.
And we have now found a number of cases, which seems to say that we go after rov. Ravina Amar Asyam Eidim Zomimim. Dam Rachman Vasisam Lo Kasher Zama. You have two Eidim that come and say, we saw Ruvain kill Shimon Monday, 1 o'clock on the corner of 3rd and La Brea. And then two other Eidim show up and say, no, they were with us in Disneyland. So because the first two Eidim, by testifying about a murder, they were trying to make the victim be put to death, these Eidim Zomimim are also put to death if the second group of Eidim say that they weren't there. However, maybe the two witnesses, when they witnessed the murder, the guy who was murdered was a treifa, and they wouldn't be liable to being put to death. Now, yet we still put them to death. After the guy was murdered, we examined him. It's only when the murderer was not put to death. They only tried to make him put to death, but they never actually put him to death. Then you kill the Eidim. Hargu ein nerogin. If the murderer was actually put to death that they testified about, they're not put to death. So you can't take a live person and examine him. And yet we say that you kill the Eidim Zomimim. Must be we go after the rov that most people are not treifas. Rav Ashi Omar Asim Shchita Atzma. The laws of Shchita. Dom Rachmon Shchot ve'echol. The Torah says shecht and eat. V'lecha shabbat mokam nekev kashachit. Maybe exactly where you put the shchita knife and divided the esophagus or trachea, there was a hole there, which would have traced up the animal. So we don't know. We have to rely on rov. That most animals don't have that. When you can not rely on the majority, so then maybe you don't rely on it. But when you can't avoid relying on it, like a shchita animal, so you don't avoid it. We rely on the majority. Li Rab Meir the Chai Shel Miyuta. Rab Meir always is concerned about even minority cases. Hachanami D'Lachol Bisra. Is he maybe he should be worried that there's always a slight possibility that there was a hole in the neck exactly where you shechted it. And would Rab Meir not eat any meat? Maybe Rab Meir never ate meat. No. Pesach v'kotchim. Rab Meir agrees that you could eat the korban pesach and you can eat kotchim. So this we'll have to resolve this tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 7?
Yeah. You want to finish the menachos tonight?
Why not?
Let's finish it.
Let me stop and start.
Well, that never works. Just leave it going. And when I label it, I've been labeling it.
Oh, okay. All right.
We're gonna do Menachos Kuf Yud 110 on the top. V'nishbos Lashem Tzvaos. The Hizkiah found 5 cities in Egypt that spoke the language of Canaan. Halchu l'Alexandria shel Mitzrayim. They went to Alexandria. Ubanu mizbech velo lav l'shem shamayim. They built an altar, but they offered korbanos to Hashem. Shenemar bayoma hu yeh mizbech l'Hashem b'toch eretz Mitzrayim. It was prophesied by Yeshayahu that there was going to be a mizbech there that offered korbanos to Hashem. So Ir HaHeres Yeyomer Le'achas. It's going to be called Heres. My Ir HaHeres Yeyomer Le'achas. What does that mean? Kim the Kargem Rav Yosef. Karta de Beis Shemesh to Osid L'Michra V'Samar de Yichad Minon. It's called the region of the sun. And this is one of the 5 cities in Egypt. How do you know that it means the sun? The word Yizrach refers to the sun rising. So the Baraisa showed that Chizkiyahu HaMelech, he influenced these leaders in Mitzrayim to serve Hashem. The pasuk says in Yeshaya, my sons and daughters are going to be brought from the ends of the earth. We're talking about going into exile. That's the Jewish exiles who lived in Babylon. They were calm. Other Jews living in other diasporas. They're more nervous, like girls are more nervous. From Tyre until Carthage. The Goyim, they know who the Jews are, and they know who Hashem is. But from Tyre, Mitzor Klape Marav, from Tyre to the west, Umekartigani Klape Mizrach, and from Carthage to the east, there they don't recognize it. And from when the rising of the sun in the east to its setting, my name is great. There will be some korbanos offered to me. So from here you see that there are goyim who recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu everywhere in the world. Omer le simiat. I didn't say that the goyim in other places that the Jews don't recognize. Dukori le Eloha de Eloha. They recognize and they call him the God of gods. That means they think there are other gods, and the Jews' God gave them permission to run the world. Then it says, "B'chol mokom muktar mugash lishmi." In all the world, there are offerings offered to my name. B'chol mokom satata, everywhere. This is actually refers to Talmidei Chachamim who can study Torah anywhere. I treat them as if they are offering me korbanos. Umincha tohira ze'alomei Torah b'tara. Someone who studies Torah in purity. No say isha v'achakach lo Torah. That means he first marries and then he devotes himself to Torah study, because otherwise you'll have impure thoughts when you study Torah. Shira malois, hine baruch es Hashem kolavdei Hashem ha'omdim b'veis Hashem baleilos. It's a blessing to people who serve God at night. What does that mean? My baleilos. This is like us. We learn Daf Yomi at night. Talmidei Chachamim that occupy themselves in Torah learning at night. It's as if they were involved in offering korbanos in the base of Mikdash. La'olam zois al Yisrael. Shlomo Melech sent word to Hiram Melech, the king of Tyre, for his help in helping him build the base of Mikdash. To send spices, to send animals for olos. There's a mizbech in heaven. Umichal saragodel oimed makriv alav korban. Michael offers korbanos forever, even when there's no mizbech on earth. And Rav Yochanan Omar, Elu Talmidei Chachamim asukim behilchos avoda. Talmidei Chachamim who study all the laws of the avoda in the base of Mikdash. It's as if the base of Mikdash was built in their day. Reish Lakish, my tichsiv, zos haTorah la'ola lamincha v'lachatas v'la'asham. Whoever engages in Torah study, it's as if you offered an ola, mincha, chatas, and an asham. Amarava, haila, oila, mincha. You just say oila, mincha, maboili. El amarava, kalosik batoira, einot sarich, lo oila, v'lo mincha, v'lo chatas, v'lasham. Whoever studies Torah doesn't have to bring these korbanos because he doesn't need atonement. Amrav Yisuk, my dichsiv, zos Torah sachatas, v'zos Torah sa'asham. Kol oisik b'Torah chatas, kilu yikriv chatas. Whoever studies the laws of chatas, it's as if he offered a chatas. Mishnah. When you bring an animal for an olah, Hashem has a pleasant aroma. By a bird olah, it says the same thing. Because a bird offering is much less expensive than an animal. And a mincha offering is much less expensive than a bird offering. So, as long as your kavanah is, your heart is towards Hashem, it's the same reach nichoach. Rav Zer Maikra, Mesuka Shnasa Oived Imaat Vimarbe Yoichal. It's whether it's harbe or whether it's ma'at, it's still sweet. When there's more korbanos, so there are more eaters. That means the kohanim. Umak kishron levalein. But that doesn't. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only looks at the heart of the person who's bringing it. Tanya Rishon ben Azai, Borei Mak Sivu Parshas Korbanos. Shul never been lo El v'lo Elohim. It doesn't say the name of Hashem El or Elohim. El Hashem. That's Hashem's Rachmim name. Shaloliten Pischon Pela Baldin Lachlak. It's to show that it's not like we're offering different korbanos to different powers. It's one Hashem. The Nemer B'Shor Agas, regarding an ox, it says Isharech Nichoch. Uva Ofadak, the little bird, it also says Isharech Nichoch. Hashem has a pleasant aroma. Uva Mincha, by a flower offering, Isharech Nichoch. Lo Emlecha. Echad Amar Bevechad Amamit Uvachi Chavin Etzlibo L'Shamayim. Whether you offer an expensive korban or not, as long as you are mechav in your heart to Shemayim, Hashem accepts it. Hashem needs to eat it. Talmud Lamer im erav lo ormela kili tevelum lo. The whole world is mine. The Nemar kili kol chayso yar behemos badrei aleph. All the beasts of the forest are mine. Yadati kol ofarim beziv shalei modi. I know all the birds. Ha'oichlab sar birim v'damatudi meshte. Lo amarti alechem zivchu kedei shetoymar eser ritzoini v'yaser ritzoini. I never told you to bring korbanos so that you will gratify Hashem and therefore He will then pay us back. Lo l'ritzoni atem zovchim el l'ritzonchem atem zovchim. It's not because I want it. It's for your gratification that you're shechting. By you fulfilling mitzvah, you get atonement. Dover acher, lirtzonchem tizbachu. You're slaughtering it for you. Lirtzonchem zovchu l'datchem zivchu. It's all for your will and for your purposes. Kidiboy minei shmuel ravuna. Inay lemisase pekochim shu posel. If you have no kavana, it's invalid. Shenemer v'shachad es ben abakor sheteshchit l'shem ben bakor. You have to have kavana. So we'll leave this last sentence for the seal. Okay, very good. I'll post that tomorrow.
7 o'clock.
Tomorrow,
Thank
7
you
o'clock.
very much.
And then the Tsurba will be at 8.
Okay. Go ahead.